Hey, what's up guys, Alex here. Thank you for checking this video and welcome to another episode about the WordPress mega menu. Welcome again. In this episode, in this tutorial, we're going to continue what we started in the previous lesson. So right now what we created some custom fields that were printing in the columns here of the appearance menu in the administration panel, and that's it. We generated these custom fields, we updated the columns. Now what we have to do, we have to build a bunch of functions, one to handle these new custom fields that we generated, so handle the saving and update of these fields. And the other thing that we have to do, we have to create a custom WalkerNav class to edit this menu, like the administration menu. So let's take a look on how to do it. Let's access back our functions.php, and here let's continue by saving and updating the field. So let's take care of this function. First, let's create the action that we need to call to trigger the saving of these custom fields. So let's call add_action. And the action that we have to call is the wp_update_nav_menu_item. This is like, all these actions are really long and kind of complicated, but of course the codecs and the developers, like guidelines and wiki of WordPress, they all have these things in separated sections and properly organized in a pretty good wiki online. So if you don't really know like how I can remember all this, I just read the documentation of WordPress. There's nothing much. As a second parameter for our action, we need to define our custom class. So in my case, I'm gonna call a method called MegaMenuSave, something really simple. And we're gonna trigger this action at 10, and we're gonna pass 3 parameters. Perfect. So now we can create the function that we just called. So MegaMenuSave. And in here, we need to grab the 3 parameters that we're passing. And the 3 parameters are the menu ID, that is the menu that we're currently updating. Then the menu item DB ID, that is, as explained by the variable name, is the menu item ID that is stored in the database. And then the third parameter, the third argument, is the menu item args. So all the arguments that are assigned to that specific item. First, what we need to do, we need to check in order to avoid to save the custom fields in case there's an Ajax call, because as you notice, probably like WordPress does triggers an Ajax call doing an autosave once every few seconds. I think once a minute. So when you're editing a post or a page or you're editing something else, WordPress in the background sometimes trigger an Ajax call to do an autosave asynchronously in order to store your data without forcing you to constantly save. We don't want to save these fields with the autosave. We want to save them only if the user actually clicks save on the menu. So in order to avoid to save these fields during an Ajax call, we can use a built-in method of WordPress to check with just a regular condition that if is defined a global doing Ajax method and this method is true, so doing Ajax it's also true. These are like global variables that global environmental variable that are getting triggered only if there's an Ajax call, a saving with an Ajax call. Let's just return this method. So we're gonna stop the execution of saving our fields if the saved is handled with an Ajax call. We don't want to do that. Perfect. Now we can actually save our fields. And if you remember, if you followed the tutorials about the sunset theme, if you remember when we created the custom fields, there are a bunch of sanitization and checks to just be sure that we're saving the proper things. It's gonna be like kind of annoying, but we have to do it. So first we need to use a built-in method to check if the admin refer is updating, so update dash the nav menu, and the second parameter is the nonce that is the safety unique variable that is stored into HTML hidden input, an HTML markup hidden input, just to check if like the actual admin is doing the call. And here is referrer check admin referrer. That's it. Okay. And the second one is the nonce, and the nonce is update dash nav dash menu dash nonce. That's perfect. And semicolon at the end. And what this self-closing function is doing basically is checking for two things. First, if the nonce, the unique variable that WordPress uses in every form, it's valid, so it's coming actually from the place that we're looking at and it's not coming from something else, it doesn't match your page. And also if the action of updating nav menu is triggered from the administration panel and is not triggered from the front end or from like an API call or whatever. So we want to save our fields only if everything is triggered from the administration panel and everything respects the proper structure of WordPress. Otherwise, these method will return false and will stop the execution of our function. So that's perfect. Now what we have to do, we have to test all the fields that we generated at the beginning, in my case just two, MegaMenu and column divider, and validate those fields and save or update those fields in case it's just an update. In order to do that, as usual, what we're doing here, we're calling the fields from the method fields list to return the proper array. And now we can do a simple for each function. So a for each loop, $fields has the regular underscore key like I did in the previous lesson. And if you don't understand why I'm doing underscore key, just check the previous lesson, check the previous video. I'm explaining in that video why I do this. And then I generate the actual key that is the same that I'm generating here. So the actual key of my field is menu item and then the name of the key that I have here. So in my case, menu item, mega menu, or mega menu item, column divider, and so on. And at this point, we should do two things. We should sanitize the field, and the other thing, we should save or update the field. We can technically skip the sanitize because this is just a checkbox, so it returns just a value of 0 or 1. So let's check that if the field that we're checking is not empty. So in order to check, we need to check the post variable, the post request, and we're going to check the post request for our key. And the second, because it's a multi-dimensional array, is the menu item db id. So it's the parameter that we're passing in the function. We're checking if our key, like custom key that are custom fields in this menu item database ID, is not empty. We are gonna do something. So we're gonna store the value, then in our case it's gonna be 0 or 1, and to store the value is just simply grab this, post the value, it's equal to this. Otherwise, we can, if we're dealing with like an input field that you can write everything, we can return just value equal null, or we could potentially return value equals 0 if it's a checkbox or whatever. Just like, let's leave it null, so we are 100% sure that we're not gonna store anything that could return a true something, like confirmation, something that is true. So that's it. This is a really simple validation. If it's not empty, just store it. If it's empty, just set null. And here you could extend it potentially with like sanitize text fields or WP cases or whatever other method. But as I said, because we are dealing with a checkbox, I don't really need to sanitize this stuff, but whatever. Now it's time to save or update our field. So also in this case, we want to check that if the value that we stored before is not null, so exclamation mark is underscore null, and here we want to check the value is, if the value is not null, that means that there's already something. So if the value is 0 or 1, we're updating. Let's update the post meta, and to update the post meta, we need to pass 3 parameters. First is the menu item DBID, that is the actual location, like the name of our item ID in the database. The second is the key the actual key of the custom meta field that we created. The third parameter is the value that we want to update. So in our case, it's going to be 0 or 1. Otherwise, we want to delete the post meta, because if the value is not 0 or not 1, if it's something that it doesn't match the 0, so for it's empty or is null, whatever, we just want to delete whatever we store in the database. So we're going to return completely empty. And to delete custom meta field, just pass the reference ID and the key of that meta field. That's perfect. Now we're saving and updating our stuff. If we go back in our administration panel, we refresh, of course nothing happens. If we open here, still we don't have anything. If we just check and uncheck this stuff and we refresh the page, it's gonna maintain our option, but this is not related to our menu. What we did right now, we just handled the saving and updating of all our field in case we're gonna print our field here. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, the last thing that we have to do in order to show these custom fields that we have here is to update the WalkerNav class, and we need to write a custom WalkerNav class. So let's do it. First, I'm gonna create a file inside my config folder, and I'm gonna create a new file, and I'm gonna call it walker-nav-menu-edit to say that this is the WalkerNav for like the menu edit in the administration panel. Here, I'm gonna open the PHP tag, and I'm not gonna close them because, as I always say, you asked me like 1,000 times, if your file is just PHP, you don't have any HTML, it's better to not close the PHP tag, because if you close it and you have an empty row, this is an HTML row. And if this PHP code gets triggered before the generation of the HTML, you're gonna have an header conflict, like header already sent or stuff like that. So if your file is just PHP, always leave it open. Don't close the PHP tag. So that's okay. Just don't do it. Okay, right now here we need to generate our custom WalkerNav class for menu editor. In admin, something like that, just like a pretty clear and obvious comment. So let's create a unique class. Let's create a custom class called MegaMenu_WalkerEdit or whatever. Oops. _WalkerEdit. You can call it however you want. Let's use like the logic of WordPress in writing classes. So camel case and underscores to separate is kind of like overkill, but it's fine. And this class extends, like it happens in the same way for the regular WalkerNav class. Also, this class extends the Walker_nav_menu_edit. That is the WalkerNav class that takes care, and menu is all capitalized, that takes care of printing the menu of the administration panel. So here we can deal in the exact same way we dealt with the WalkerNav class, the regular front-end WalkerNav class. If we call some functions, for example, starter element or fields or end element, whatever, we can override the output of those functions or add it to it because we're extending the native class. If we don't write anything and we're printing like a 0 output, whatever, we're gonna overwrite completely the WalkerNav class. We don't want to do it. We just want to add to it. So just to give you an example, let's tackle the implementation of this class that it's currently empty. So let's say back in the functions.php that we want to add a filter, and the filter is called wp_edit_nav_menu_walker. This is the filter to add a custom functions for the WalkerNav menu edit in the administration panel. And we want to call a custom functions called MegaMenu WalkerNav, something like that, whatever. You can call it however you want. And we need to trigger this at 99 as well. So a position 99. We don't want to trigger it before the generation of the handling of everything else. We want to trigger this at the last possible moment because we don't want to mess things up. So let's create the function that we just defined, the MegaMenu WalkerNav. Walker nav, perfect. And here, what is gonna happen, this filter is gonna pass just one parameter, and the one parameter is just the actual Walker. So the Walker variable carries the default Walker nav class that generates this. So to give you an example, if we do this, if we just return the Walker and semicolon, we save, we go back in our backend, we refresh, nothing changes. Everything looks the same, everything is perfect. If we return an empty string and we save it and we refresh, look what happened, completely empty. That's because we are overriding the type of Walker that we want to use for our admin menu. Does it make sense? Okay, so right now what we can do, we can update the Walker and say that the new Walker has to reflect the class name that we want to use. So the custom class name that we generated, MegaMenuWalkerEdit. And then we can check that if, just to be sure that we're not messing things up, if this class doesn't exist, and the class that we want to check is the new class that we define, so the Walker, if this class doesn't exist, then require the new Walker nav class, because if this class already exists, we don't want to include it again. It means that it's already there. It's just like a safety check in case we already require the files that we need. And if the class doesn't exist, that means we need to require once the file that is inside config Walker nav menu edit. And in order to point in the same location, let's use the dir name PHP function, and it's dir name. And let's say that I want this file, that is the current one, and concatenate to the location of my Walker nav class. Go config/Walker nav menu edit.php. And then at the end, of course, we're returning the Walker. So if we save now and we go back in our backend, we refresh, the menu goes back in place because, of course, the Walker that we're using is extending the default Walker and we're not doing anything to affect it. But if we do something like that, for example, let's use the built-in method function start element, and the start element requires a lot of parameters like the usual Walker nav class. So let's say that it's a reference of the output variable, then the item, then the depth that it's equal default to 0, then the arguments variable that it's equal to default to array, and then the ID of the element that is default to 0. So if we open this function and we say that the output that we want to return is actually equal to 0 or like equal to empty, and we save it, look what happened. Let's refresh. It's empty again. So we're using our class and we are overriding the output. What we want to do, we don't want to override the output, but we want to implement our custom fields inside the unique output. So let's do it by generating custom variable called item output. And we're going to use this in a moment, but for now it's just empty. And then we can check that the parent class, the start element of the parent class, let's grab all these things. So we're going to grab the item output. Oops, this is wrong. Item output. Am I writing? Oh, this is totally bad. Okay, item output. Let's write it properly, otherwise we're gonna mess things up. So we're triggering the starter element class of the parent, so of the Walker nav edit, and we are triggering the same thing. So we're calling this class and we're passing all the variable that we're getting there in order to not override. Let's get item, then let's get the depth, let's get the arguments, and then let's get the ID. And then semicolon. But the thing that we're gonna do, we're gonna inject or add to the output because we're going to concatenate equal, so it means we are adding more stuff. And we're going to do a regex replace to check if the fields that are inside the starter element loop in the default WorldCurveNav edit class are matching our custom fields. And if those are matching, that means that we need to do something different because are not the default ones, so WordPress doesn't know how to handle. And in order to do a regex check, let's use a preg_replace. This is standard PHP, and the preg replace needs the first parameter to be the regex string, and the regex string is going to be really complicated, but you can find this code in the GitHub repository. So if you don't want to write it and just misspell something, just grab it from the GitHub. You can find the link in the description below the video. But the regex is just like / open the regular brackets and close it. So / open close /. That's perfect. Inside here, question mark equal minor, then inside the regular brackets, field set, pipe p square brackets, caret bigger than, and after outside the square brackets, plus class equal to double quotes, inside the double quotes, square bracket again, caret again, and then close the double quotes inside the square brackets, star field dash move. And the second parameter that we need to check after the comma is these get fields. And this is a function that we don't have right now, but we're gonna call. And the parameter for the get fields method that we're calling, we need to pass the item, then the depth, and then the arguments. And then the last parameter is the item output. And that's perfect. Okay, this is totally confusing, I know. So we have a preg replace, a preg match that checks for the string. If it's matching, regex, it's kind of complicated. I don't want to spend like half an hour explaining to you, but it's checking, calling this method, and then returning the item output. So we're doing this. We're injecting like an extra stuff inside the regular output of the start element. Now we need to create this function because we don't have it. So let's do it here. And let's say that this is a protected function because we don't want to call this function outside this very own class. So it's protected only if the class is called within the class can be accessed. So it's the get fields, and we need to grab these three parameters that are the default plus default one that we're gonna add like regularly. So it's item $depth, then the arguments that by default is an empty array, and the fourth parameter that we're not passing but starts by default with 0 is the ID. Here we just need to print HTML. So we're gonna get the menu item custom fields for this theme, and then we're gonna print it in an HTML way by doing an action. In order to dynamically print the HTML without affecting the actual output of the HTML, we need to use ob_start and ob_getClean. And this is kind of confusing, but I know it's kind of advanced, but that's how WordPress handles this thing. So ob_start and return ob_getClean. So by using these two methods, we're saying to PHP, this is regular PHP, that whatever we write inside here in between these two methods, between the ob_start and the ob_getClean, even if it's HTML, we're triggering another function that returns HTML, doesn't have to like echo it right away. It just needs to get injected. It doesn't need to like create confusion or create issues with our HTML header submission, all this kind of stuff. Like we're cleaning, we're sanitizing a little bit. It's not the right word, but it's kind of complicated. I don't want to mess with your mind too much. Let's just keep it. I'm gonna do a lesson about PHP for like to explain properly this stuff. But the only thing that we have to do here, we have to trigger an action, and the action is default WP nav menu item custom fields. And this function or this action requires all the parameters that we're passing to the get field. So we're passing our item ID, then we're passing the full item object, then the depth, then the arguments array, and then the ID. Perfect. Let's save it. Let's go back in our backend. Let's refresh. And we got an issue here. Sprint if functions line 46, we did something wrong. So functions line 46, we have sprintf fields, sprintf field, what is that? Call to undefined function sprintf. Oh, sorry. This is a typo, so we are calling this function here, and let's refresh again. Okay, it's fixed, perfect. That was a typo from the previous lesson. Sorry about that. So now, if we open, what do we have here? We have our 2 checkboxes, but there's no text. Oh, did we forget to write text? Yes, I guess so, because we have the mega menu, that's perfect. Label, we don't have anything written in the label, so let's fix this. Description, label for echo value. Oh, we didn't write the name of this thing. So sorry. We need to write the label of this. This is so embarrassing. Okay, we just forgot to write the label. So echo escape attribute label. Let's save it. Let's go back here, refresh, open up. Yay, activate mega menu and column divider. We have our 2 custom classes, our 2 custom fields, and every other fields of our custom menu, like mega menu ID in the administration panel, have those fields. And because the way we structure our code, if we go back in our functions.php, we want to add more stuff. So let's check, for example, this is a sub menu. We don't have any class. This is divider post. So if we want to have a divider, not a column divider, and this is a regular link, footer image. So footer image, column divider. Okay, if we want to add other 2 checkboxes for inline divider and footer image, we just need to add more elements to this array. So let's say that this is going to be a simple divider. And let's call it inline divider, and the second one is going to be footered image. This is footered image. Save it. Let's go back in our backend. Let's refresh, and there you go. Now you have all your custom options. And because the way that we did it, we created a function here, the mega menu fields, that is getting called with the same action here by our get fields walkernav class. We can edit how the HTML gets printed inside our menu. So if you don't like this structure here, you don't want to use the built-in CSS of WordPress, you can definitely print whatever HTML you want. You can have, like, I don't know, toggle like in iOS or whatever, a cool interface. You can have these inline in like 2 columns, 4 columns. You can add like different crazy colors, whatever. You have full control on this. I just did it in a super easy way, so I don't have to worry about dealing with the style of CSS, whatever you want, but you can totally do it. So let's see if it works. Let's say that this, our series is the activate mega menu, and then this is a regular link. This is a regular link. We don't have anything. This is not a column divider. This is an inline divider. And this thing is, oh, description and divider. We also have description. So let's add it right away. And this has a footer image, and it's a column divider. And well, you know what I mean. Footer image, let's say like we saved a bunch of things. Save it. Let's open up. Yeah, it saved our activate thing. That's perfect. We don't have anything here. Anything here. This is an inline divider. That's amazing. It's working. Column, footer image. That's perfect. The last thing that we missed is just the actual description, and the description is equal to description. Actually, the label of description is description. If we refresh, we got the description. Fantastic. So now, of course, if we refresh the homepage, nothing actually changed because our WalkerNav class, the default WalkerNav class that we have here, is still checking for those classes, the class column divider, the class MegaMenu, and so on, so on. So the only thing that we have to do in the next lesson is, instead of checking for classes with array search, we're gonna check for actual fields in the same way that it's happening here. So if the item has a description, if the item has an attribute title, so WordPress, like the Walker, already gives us everything to deal with that, but I'm gonna show you how to update this in a better way in the next lesson. As a homework, if you want, you can try to do it by yourself, just replacing all these classes, all the checks with the inline attribute of the item object. You can totally do it, just have fun with it. But if you don't want, you can just wait another day and I'm gonna upload the last section of this implementation. But I mean, this is pretty cool, right? I know that it's kind of complicated, it's kind of advanced, all these actions, hooks to create a custom fields, update it, save it, and use a different WalkerNav class to just inject and call an action from a fields inside a custom class. It's just a little bit convoluted, especially this Regex class can be kind of overwhelming if you're not used to it. But unfortunately, that's how WordPress works. The amazing thing is that if we follow all the steps and the actual documentation of WordPress, we can actually edit everything, and we're not affecting the source code of WordPress. We are doing our own implementation, so we're not destroying anything. We can definitely update our plugins, update our themes, update the core method of WordPress without affecting how we're updating the administration panel, because we are respecting the codex of WordPress, and this is really important. So it's pretty much it for today's lesson. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. And if you want, you can spend a couple of minutes on the support me page of my website, where you can find all different ways and methods to support me, support my channel, and help me to do better videos and better tutorials for you. Thank you again, guys, and until the next lesson, as usual, happy coding!